Well, welcome, Iowa pastors and church leaders. Chris Mavity here, and I'm so thrilled to be able to introduce to you Kyle Bueermann today. Kyle, thank you so much for being with us. I'm in Salina, Kansas with Ben and Tim and Chris Eller, and we're at the Replant Rural Summit. And Kyle is the key guy. I'm just going to call you Kyle the key guy. Is that okay? You want to say hi to these guys in Iowa?
Hello, Iowans. It's nice to see you. Good to be with you today. Thanks for the opportunity, man. Really
man. Thanks for what you're doing. And Kyle, I don't think most of our audience will know who you are, but they need to know who you are, at least in my opinion, because of not only the work that you've done and the work that you're currently doing, but the work that you have planned. Yeah. So will you tell them just a little bit about yourself, maybe your ministry journey, and we got to hear about your family.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So,
thank you.
Yeah, as Chris said, my name's Kyle Bueermann. I live in Lubbock, Texas, and I work for the North American Mission Board Replant Team. I've been full-time with the team for about 2 years, worked part-time and as a contractor for a couple of years before that. I pastored for 9 years in New Mexico, a little town called Clayton, New Mexico, up in the northeast corner, and then a spot called Alamogordo, and I was there for 5 years. And yeah, I'm a West Texas kid, and married my wife in 2004, and my wife Michelle, and we have 2 kids: Noah, who is 15, and Haley, who will turn 14 in just about a month.
Oh my goodness! So your life is full.
Oh my gosh!
Your life is just the family side.
My life is,
tell me about
my life
this.
is filled with chasing kids right now to track and tennis practice and track and tennis tournaments.
Who's the tennis?
Tennis is my daughter. So much fun. And then my son's decided to lose his mind and run track. So
is that right? I got to meet your
fun.
Daughter. When I was in high school, I played tennis. Undefeated.
Hey, all right.
I thought I was going to be the next like Arthur Ashe or Pete Sampras or
I played tennis. That's all I'll say. Okay. I played tennis when I was in high school and loved it. Yeah.
Well, Kyle, we've got a bunch of questions for you, but really, I know that God has led you in ministry, and I know that you were instrumental in the whole Replant Hub stuff. I'll say in quotes because things kind of gelled, at least at some. Can you walk us through that, and why is the Replant Hub so important to you?
Yeah, so the Replant Hub came about because we kept hearing stories from churches and pastors who, some churches who did not have a full-time pastor, really didn't have a bivocational pastor, really couldn't afford even a bivocational. And so they were really struggling. And they just said, we need some help.
Okay. Can I do a quick time out? Cause I'm going to do what do they call it if I was an actor or something, this is a side cut or whatever.
Okay.
Please listen to what Kyle is saying there. You may know somebody exactly in that situation. The church is without a pastor, or they want to start a church and don't yet have a pastor. The Replant Hub is, I'm not going to say it's a miracle, but it is due to the time that we live and the advantages that we have that's happened. So that's a little cutaway. Yeah. So thank you for pausing.
And so the Replant Hub, one of the great things about it is we discovered churches who were already producing really great video content. So we have some like Andy Addis, who kind of already has this multi-site network across rural churches in Kansas. And then some others that were just producing really good quality video content and were willing to give it away and tell churches, we have this and we want you to use it in whatever capacity you can. And so we started out, the original idea behind that was really to serve churches without a pastor and bivocational pastors who are working maybe 40, 50 hours a week. And in many cases still have a Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night.
Yes.
And we wanted to be able to provide some resources to help take something off his plate so that he could focus on his job, but also focus on his people and do some shepherding and some caring for them rather than just preparing 3 sermons, 3 Bible studies.
Gotcha.
And as we began developing it, we kept hearing, hey, we're really excited about sermon content. We think that'll be good, but our biggest need is worship. So we would hear from pastors and say, I'm the pastor, I'm able to handle the load, but we don't have anybody that can lead worship. Or we have one person in our church who can play the piano, who can play the guitar, and either they work sometimes on Sunday mornings or when they're gone, we don't have anybody else. And so we were planning on, we had these discussions about adding worship later on, but it became something that we put on the front end of the Replant Hub because we kept hearing that this sounds great, but here's our need. And I can think of several pastors who've contacted me and said, hey, I got a call from our worship leader at 8 a.m. on a Sunday morning that they were sick.
Wow. Okay.
And it was going to be me standing up there with a hymnal singing a cappella.
Yeah.
But I was able to go download something from the Replant Hub really quickly.
Now, some of you in Iowa, you can relate to that, and that's actually happened to you. And it's like, oh, now what do I do? Well, Replant Hub is a tool. Others of you are like, oh, well, I just would call the next person on the list or have the different person lead worship. And so the Replant Hub is really a tool to help span those gaps is what I'm hearing. But again, please don't just think only of you and your ministry. Think of somebody that might be in that position, either has been in that position or could be, that that you can help direct them. This is a fantastic resource that is complimentary, no fees. And guys like Kyle and others are working to help resource the pastors and church leaders from around the country, probably around the world by now, because it's all digital. Can I tell a quick story? And then I've got a couple more questions for you. When I first was introduced and started talking to Kyle, we had a church that was working on some rural initiatives, First Family Church in Ankeny. And I asked Kyle how, maybe I thought it was going to be a huge challenge to get, approvals and all this for the content that Todd Stiles and the team over there at First Family produce. And do you remember the conversation? I don't know if you do. Yeah. Will you tell them what happened? It'll mean more.
Yeah, I think you said, hey, there's this church. They've been talking about doing some rural initiatives and providing some content. And I said, well, Chris, we've got the vehicle for that, right? If I'm remembering the conversation correctly, I said this is the whole idea behind the Replant Hub is to provide the platform so that you didn't have to go out, either First Family or State Convention didn't have to go out and build the site. We've already got it done. And I've had a couple of other state conventions as well who've contacted us and said, hey, we were already talking about doing something like this. Can we use the Replant Hub? To which we said, absolutely. That's why it's there.
Isn't that beautiful? This cooperative nature. And not only in general, but specifically, because I was shocked. I was like, I think I even asked you, I'm like, Kyle, why are you saying yes right now? Like, isn't there some, I was like mystified a little bit, which I should have just kept my mouth shut, but it was such a different response because that's not always the way that it is in ministry. So thank you for your heart in that. But then also knowing, well, we're not just going to put anything up there. I mean, there's some obvious credibility and things of that nature, but I just want to thank you because I've not been able to do that in person yet. For your mindset and your heart set in that and helping First Family and other churches just propagate the gospel. So why Replant Hub specifically? I know you talked generally, but now I want to reach into Kyle's mind and heart. As God's led you, what the heck's going on in your mind and heart?
So the first thing is we wanted to get resources to churches quickly. So for churches who, pastors, like I said, are really struggling. They need some help. Even just, they need some good sermon prep resources, and they don't have thousands of dollars to drop on certain Bible software packages. I mean, or they don't have a book, but they don't have a book budget, where they can just go out and drop hundreds of dollars on that.
Okay.
So, I mean, and in some of the documents that we have on the Replant Hub, we'll talk about different ways to use it, and that is, you can use it in primary gathering on Sunday morning if that's a need. You can use it in a secondary service, Sunday night, Wednesday night. You can use it as a sermon preparation tool. We have now dozens of series through books of the Bible that churches have done that a pastor can watch as a supplement to his study.
Beautiful.
We even have some churches who have put up their outlines, and I mean they're fillable outlines, and have said, take this. If this works in your context, take this outline and use it. And that's the beauty of what the Replant Hub is it churches saying, here's what we've produced, use it in whatever capacity works for you and your church.
And so why were you personally drawn to that?
Oh, why was I drawn to because I had served in, I had the ability to serve as a full-time pastor. But I encountered at associational meetings throughout my pastoral ministry, I would encounter pastors who were working 2, sometimes 3 jobs just to make ends meet, and then seeking to serve their church well. And so as soon as this idea was brought and said, hey, this is something we would like to do, I immediately had some guys in mind that I thought this is for them to be able to help. And again, we're not trying to replace a pastor. We're just trying to help churches, and particularly in rural contexts. In some parts of the country, you have rural towns that pop up every 20 miles or so.
Okay. Yep.
You get west, really, of Texas, and 20, 30 miles between towns turns into 50, 60 miles between towns.
Okay.
And you have churches and pastors who are extremely isolated, communities that are extremely isolated out in the middle of nowhere. So when one of those churches is pastorless, it's not as simple as calling the church in the next town or calling a director of missions and saying, I'm going to be out, can you come preach for me? Or we're in an interim, can you send us an interim every Sunday? Because in some cases, it's 80, 90 miles to those churches. And so we realized we need to do something to help, to fill the gaps wherever it's necessary. And yeah, that just resonated with me because, like I said, I immediately thought of these guys that I knew who were doing that, and these churches that were looking around and going, we don't have a pastor and we don't know where we're going to find a pastor. And so it was just and this came really out of COVID, and where video ministry was no longer scary, and it wasn't something that, only the big churches did. I mean, everybody was doing something video-wise. And praise the Lord that it happened in 2020 where, even if you just had a smartphone and Facebook, you were able to do something.
Yes. And
we were able to connect with church folks and connect in worship gatherings in whatever way we could, right? And we were pulling out all the stops and saying, this is what we can do. And so out of that came the Replant Hub, where we said we can help out with some resources on a larger scale that could really be a service to hundreds of churches. So one of the really cool things about the Replant Hub is the wide variety of styles that you'll see from churches on there. So we have, for instance, Sandals Church in Southern California, multi-site church that has the flavor of Southern California. We have a church called Church in the Country out of Woodville, Texas, that is boots and jeans and a trucker hat. And then you have guys in suits and ties. So you're going to see a wide variety. And that's been one of the cool things from my side, is getting to see this array of churches that have sent us content. Some mega churches, yes. Some very normative sized churches who have put the resources together to be able to create quality video content and then say we want to give it away. So I'm confident you're going to find something that you'll in there that you might, maybe sandals doesn't work for your context. You're going to find something that will connect.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, especially because you're wearing a red hat.
Yeah, that's right.
And we're green in Iowa. Come on, Cultivation Co-op is John Deere.
So West Texas is very green too. There's lots of John Deere stuff. But when I first saw Mark walking around with that first generation, the red and the gray International Harvester hat, my dad drove International tractors.
Did he
and
really?
So,
okay.
That's what he farmed with for 30 years. And so, I connected with that. And I was already doing like the replanting revitalization thing. But as soon as I saw Mark with International Harvester stuff, I said, these are my people. I need to get to know him.
IH, that's awesome. Yeah, and so if anything that Kyle's mentioning can help you, or maybe would be a resource to somebody you know, again, it's complimentary, free.
Yes.
There's no fees involved or anything like that. But you can go to the Replant Hub. Why don't you tell them how to get to the webpage?
Yeah, so you can go to replanthub.com and register there. And as Chris said, this is completely free. One of the beauties of being Southern Baptist is we have this wonderful thing called the cooperative program. And through cooperative program resources, we were able to provide this completely free to churches. And we even have some recommendations. So if video is a completely new thing for your church and you're thinking, I don't know how we can go out and I don't know how we get the equipment for this, we have some guides on the Replant Hub. And quite honestly, with the technology we have today, all you really need is a smart TV that you could plug a thumb drive into. If you can download videos onto a thumb drive, plug them directly into a TV.
Wow.
Plug a computer directly into the TV. We've tried to simplify it as much as possible.
Yeah. So just real quick, there's a plethora of resources. It's not just one thing. It's not just video. You already mentioned the outlines. I've been on it many times. I've seen some worship.
Yep.
I've seen the outlines. I've seen sermons.
Yep.
I've seen a study aids. It's a ton of resources designed. Go ahead. You were going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say, so some of the things that we're planning on adding soon, we have some training resources that are on there. Steve Dighton, who is a longtime pastor, actually planted Lenexa Baptist Church in Kansas City, shot some sermon preparation videos. So even for a longtime pastor, I watched them and I learned some stuff because Steve's been at this a really long time. But even if you're a brand new preacher, or if you have someone in your church who's called to ministry and they want to know how to get started in that. I think there's 6 videos that Steve shot, just kind of walking through a simple sermon preparation process. We have events from our Replant Summit that happens in Atlanta. We'll have the videos from this event that we're at right now, the Rural Summit. Those will go up there as well. So even for guys who are not able to make it to Atlanta or Salina, Kansas, we put the main sessions up there so they can watch and still be encouraged and equipped that way.
All right, I'm going to wrap this up by saying 3 things. Here's the 3: resourced, ready, and reliable. That's what we are for you. There's resources, you're hearing about some right now. They're readily available. Like you can quit watching this, go
That's right.
And boom, you're in. There is a registration. You put some stuff in there, no credit card info, nothing. And then you're registered, and then all of a sudden, all these resources are available for you, and they're reliable. Yeah. They're coming from fellow churches and people who do the work. It's not theory. Yeah. I haven't seen anything on there that's theoretical.
No.
I haven't seen anything on there that's like, hey, one day we're going to go to Mars. Nothing. Zero. And so take advantage of it. Kyle, thank you for being here. I know you got tons of stuff going on. You pulled away. You're a trooper. Thank you so much for doing this for us and for those of us in Iowa that are gonna see this. Thanks for your work, buddy. We appreciate you so much.
Thanks for having me on.